p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report with John Dickerson starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report for September 5th, 2024. I'm John Dickerson. Warning signs missed and ignored, and the grim aftermath of the 218th school shooting in America in 2024. We'll have reports from Georgia on what we know and line up the questions about what we don't. Hunter Biden now says that he's guilty in that tax evasion case. He had said that he was innocent, and for a flickering moment Thursday, he said he was innocent but would plead guilty anyway. Jessica Levinson will untangle the pretzel for us. And staying in the courtroom, Trump's election interference case saw some action in the land of the gavel. It's the first time since the Supreme Court loosened the idea of presidential immunity. We'll take the measure of the judge's remarks on Thursday. Plus, we'll get some clarity, we hope, on that Russian meddling in the election from the former head of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. We'll also look at some new jobs data and detail why the Secretary of State is in Haiti. And finally, Ticketmaster created molten rage among Oasis fans trying to attend the reunion tour. Now, the UK government would like a word. The Daily Report starts in a moment. Hello, thank you for joining us. Jury selection was set to start Thursday in the second trial this year for Hunter Biden, this time for federal tax evasion. But the president's son requested to change his plea several times over the course of the day, and eventually he entered a guilty plea. Hunter originally pleaded not guilty to 9 counts related to failing to pay and file his taxes between 2016 and 2019. This is Hunter Biden's second conviction. He was found guilty in June of illegally purchasing and possessing a firearm and faces sentencing next month. CBS News legal contributor and Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson joins me now. Jessica, I'm chuckling because trying to keep up with this, it was started with a not guilty plea. Then he requested to change his plea to something called an Alford plea, which I'd love for you to explain to us. And then it became an open plea. What does all of that mean, and why do you think it happened?
Well, all of that means that he had a shifting strategy at the very end. And when it comes to state courts, a lot of defendants plead, it's not called Alford in state court. It's usually named after a different case. Like in California, it's called People v. West. But what it means is basically no contest, and it has exactly the same implication as a guilty plea. But it allows the defendant to say, okay, I see you have a lot of evidence, but I'm not admitting guilt. But whatever happens after that, the sentence, it has exactly the same effect. So I was speaking to my friend who's a prosecutor earlier, and I said, in state court, have you ever seen a judge say, I'm not accepting a plea of no contest, or in California, again, at People v. West? And he said, yeah, one time in 15 years. So what was happening was largely not actually, I think, legal. It was political. They wanted to give Hunter Biden some ability to save face. And ultimately, the prosecution just wasn't going for it, which is also, frankly, probably a little political.
So just on that no contest concept, which is one that people are probably more familiar with, that's always puzzled me. Is it basically just face saving? I mean, I get to tell my friends and family, no, I was really innocent, despite the mountains of evidence.
It really is largely just face saving. In terms of the consequence, again, there's generally very little difference. When it comes to an Alford plea, that's in federal court. They are more rare. It is named after a Supreme Court case. And when it comes to federal prosecutors, they are generally averse to that. They want what Special Counsel Weiss said today, which is, look, he did this, we have enough evidence, and we want to hear it in open court. But in terms of the legal consequence, it's largely about saying, well, I pled no contest, I didn't plead guilty.
And so finally, on the legal consequence, what kind of punishment could the president's son be facing?
Well, now that he has pleaded guilty, he was facing up to 17 years. I do not think he'll get that, not because he decided to plead guilty and save everybody the time and resources, and frankly, himself the embarrassment, but because most people don't get the maximum. Let's be clear. And so when it comes to this, a nonviolent crime, when the judge who's sentencing knows that he ultimately did pay back the money, I think we're going to see something substantially less than 17 years. This is not a first-time offense. He was convicted of the gun charges, but exactly where we see that, I think every federal judge in the world would say the judge has discretion.
Jessica Levinson, thank you once again for helping us through all of that. Now to the victims of the school shooting in Winder, Georgia. Authorities have identified the 4 who were killed Wednesday at Apalachee High School. 2 were 14-year-old students that you see here, and 2 were math teachers, one of whom was a coach. 9 others, 8 students and 1 teacher, were hospitalized with gunshot wounds. They're all expected to make full recoveries. The suspected 14-year-old gunman is a student at Apalachee High. He's in custody, and police say he used an AR-style rifle, the most commonly used weapon in mass shootings. The Barrow County community is grieving. One student who was at school at the time of the shooting describes her experience while also mourning the loss of her classmate.
We all went to the corner of the room, and and someone did receive a message that he did die, and he was a very sweet kid. He did not deserve this. Neither did the coach or everyone else. And yeah, it's very unfortunate, but I just hope that the shooter finds God and that God forgives what they did.
CBS News senior national correspondent Mark Strassman is in Winder, Georgia. Mark, what do we know? What more do we know about the victims?
Well, first, John, some good news in a moment that could use some good news. 9 people were either wounded or hurt during the shooting. 8 of them have now been released from the hospital. The 9th is in stable condition. That's the good news. Now the rest of it. This is a community that is experiencing a lot of anguish that is real and that is raw. People here are trying to make sense of the unthinkable. They're also just trying to figure out a possible why somebody would do something like this. And those questions are unanswered, and the grief, of course, is also unresolved.
Yeah, Mark, tell me about, is there any, I know it's really early, but any new information about the shooting suspect's history with law enforcement or motive that's come out since the shooting?
Well, here's what's new, John, just in the last 12 to 18 hours, say. The teenage suspect had been on local law enforcement's radar for about the last year or so. Originally, there was a threat posted online. Neighboring county deputies went to the suspect's house, talked to his father and to the boy, asked him whether he did it. He denied doing it. The father admitted that there were guns in the house, but said that the boy did not have unsupervised access to those guns. And so the case was then closed. Seen through the prism of what happened here yesterday, of course, that looks like a missed opportunity. But I interviewed the sheriff of Jackson County, the neighboring county, who said, based on the information that was known at the time, in May of 2023, the deputy did the best he possibly could and no charges were warranted. But for people here, of course, they look at that and think, wow, was it possible to do something then and avoid what happened here yesterday?
And finally, Mark, the suspect will be in court Friday. What can we expect at that hearing?
Yeah, I think the hearing in the morning is going to be perfunctory, John. I think he'll be informed of the 4 murder charges against him. They'll try to work out whether he has representation, and if not, and if he needs a lawyer, they'll begin the process of getting him one. The more fundamental issue here is the investigation into what happened, and of course the grief here that goes on unchecked. John.
Mark Strassman in Winder, Georgia. Thank you so much, Mark. President Biden visited Westby, Wisconsin Thursday to announce more than $7 billion in investments towards helping bring clean, affordable energy to rural and remote areas. The money in part will go towards building battery storage, upgrading stations, and funding wind and solar power. The project will be funded by the Democrats' Inflation Reduction Act, passed in 2022. It's the largest investment of its kind since Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal. President Biden is also preparing to formally block Nippon Steel's nearly $15 billion proposal to acquire U.S. steel. The deal with the Japanese company would put thousands of American union jobs at risk by closing steel mills. It would also lead to the closure of U.S. Steel's headquarters in Pennsylvania. The deal is also under investigation by the Interagency Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States for potential national security concerns. Donald Trump highlighted his top economic policy proposals Thursday while speaking to the Economic Club of New York. Some of his top-line agenda items include issuing a national emergency declaration to increase domestic energy production by building new pipelines and oil refineries, among other things. He also reiterated that he would like to terminate the Inflation Reduction Act and make permanent his 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is set to expire next year. Trump also announced a version of a plan that presidents from Clinton to Bush to Obama have tried.
I will create a government efficiency commission tasked with conducting a complete financial and performance audit of the entire federal government and making recommendations for drastic reforms. We need to do it.
Trump discussed the plan last month with Elon Musk, who Trump said has agreed to head the task force for that commission should Trump get elected and follow through with it. Lawyers were back in a D.C. court Thursday to discuss the conspiracy and obstruction case charging Donald Trump with interfering with the 2020 election. It was the first hearing since the Supreme Court ruled that the former president and all former and current presidents have immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts taken in office. Trump's lawyers are now pushing to have charges against him dismissed because of that ruling. CBS News campaign reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman joins me now. Katrina, what was the purpose of this specific hearing?
Well, to begin with, it was meant to chart a path forward for this case, although it also became a brief arraignment for Donald Trump, who waived his right to appear. But because special counsel Jack Smith came out with a new superseding indictment, Trump also had to enter a new plea of not guilty through his attorney. But the bulk of today was really spent with Judge Chutkan coming together with the parties for the first time in over a year, John, and talking about their different views on how this case should proceed. The prosecution wanted to start with an opening brief about the issue of presidential immunity, whereas Trump's team laid out a plan that went into 2025 and started with their contention that special counsel Jack Smith is not even lawfully appointed or funded, which is how he just got his Florida case dismissed, although it's important to note that there is binding D.C. precedent on that issue.
So Judge Chutkan said that setting a trial date would be, quote, an exercise in futility. Why did she say that?
So both Judge Chutkan and the prosecution acknowledged that there will be at least one more interlocutory appeal in this case when it comes to the issue of immunity. Judge Chutkan will be applying the Supreme Court's immunity ruling for the first time to this superseding indictment, and she knows that Trump is going to appeal that back up to the Supreme Court once she makes determinations. Part of the issue here is that there are aspects of the immunity ruling that are vague. For one, you have to distinguish between what is an official act and what is a private act. There are arguments around that. And then there's also this issue of presumptive immunity for some official acts. For example, one thing that came up in court is Trump's team thinks that just because former Vice President Mike Pence was discussed in the superseding indictment and evidence about him was presented to the grand jury, that makes the superseding indictment invalid. They say that he is covered by the immunity ruling. And so that's just one example of issues that are going to come up as this case proceeds.
And finally, the judge did seem, though, even though she recognized the fact that this is going to bounce around for a while, she did seem inclined to allow the special prosecutor to lay out part of the case, which would then, I presume, contain possibly all kinds of new information that he's come up with in his investigation.
Exactly. And actually, within hours after the hearing, she has already put out her order, and she is going in line with what the prosecution asked for. They have a brief on presidential immunity due September 26th. And what's going to be interesting about that is they say it will contain both pled and unpled facts. That means new information about Donald Trump could come to light before the election, even though we're not going to have a trial yet. And this is something that his lawyer also took issue with today. He tried to push back, saying that he was worried about more information coming out at a sensitive time, alluding to the fact that we're bumping up on the election. Now, Judge Chutkan made it very clear in her courtroom today that the electoral calendar will not be a factor for her. She said she's not weighing the presidency, she's weighing a 4-count indictment, and that she is not going to plan her trial around the election or take it into account with her decision-making.
Katrina Kaufman for us in Washington. Thank you so much, Katrina.
Thank you, John.
Secretary Antony Blinken makes a rare trip to Haiti. We'll have more on his visit to the island nation and the efforts to contain growing gang violence. Plus, for months, France has been politically divided. Now a new prime minister has been tasked with bringing unity to the country. No easy feat. You're streaming The Daily Report.
These are the stories
1, 2, 3, go!
Of we, the people.
We're trying to generate our own hope.
It's a huge deal.
I'm enabling them to feel valued.
Eye on America. Weeknights on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides. Stream our expanded 1-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Exclusively on CBS News 24/7, the streaming home of CBS News.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Negotiators are still working on a hostage and ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, but there are no signs that the two parties are any closer to accepting it. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists on keeping military control of Gaza's border with Egypt. Protests asking him to relent in order to free the hostages have not changed his position. BBC correspondent Mike Thompson has more in Jerusalem.
On Wednesday, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant referred to the more than week-long military campaign aimed at ridding the West Bank of what Israel calls terrorists as mowing the grass. The latest illustration of this was in the northern city of Tubas, where 5 people were killed by a drone strike, an Israeli drone strike on a car. Now, all 5 were said to have been threatening Israeli forces, and one, the IDF says, was the son of a commander of the Al-Aqsa brigades. Now, over the last week in the West Bank, 39 people have been killed. 7 of them, according to Palestinian authorities, are children. A 14-year-old boy was killed in Tulkarm earlier this week, and a 16-year-old girl in a place quite near to Jenin. Now, Jenin is a flashpoint city. It's a place that has a refugee camp housing something like 14,000 people. And this camp has one of the highest unemployment rates of all 19 that span across the whole West Bank. And it's thought to be a fertile recruitment ground, according to the Israeli military, for Iran-backed Islamic Jihad and Hamas. Now, I've talked so far just about the deaths over the last 1 week, but if we go back to the beginning of the Gaza war, the UN says more than 600 people have been killed in the West Bank. And the fear is that if this violence keeps spiraling, we could soon see a situation almost as bad as that in Gaza. Mike Thompson, BBC News for CBS News in Jerusalem.
Ukraine has named a new foreign minister as President Volodymyr Zelensky looks to shake up his government as Russia's invasion approaches its 3rd year. Parliament approved the appointment of Andriy Sybiha. He was previously an ambassador to Turkey. He replaces Dmytro Kuleba, who was an advocate for Western support for Ukraine. Zelensky is replacing several officials, saying that Ukraine needs new energy. The war with Russia has been going on for 900+ days. It will be winter soon, which is expected to slow down the war on the ground. Ukraine's power grid has come under consistent attack by Russian missiles, and some people may be without heat and water during the coldest months. France is also seeing some new leadership in the government. President Emmanuel Macron has tapped Republicans Party member Michel Barnier as his new prime minister. The move ends a 2-month political deadlock following inconclusive parliamentary elections. The 73-year-old is the oldest in that role in France's modern history, and he faces the very tricky task of forming a stable government in a deeply divided National Assembly. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was in Haiti Thursday, meeting with the prime minister and other leaders amid corruption and violence in the country. Blinken is the senior-most U.S. official to visit Haiti since 2015. He's there to support Haiti's leadership, which is struggling to address the gangs that have at times had total control of the capital, leading to thousands of deaths and the displacement of hundreds of thousands. On Wednesday, Haiti declared a nationwide state of emergency in an effort to curb the violence. Marcia Biggs joins us now from Los Angeles. She's a freelance journalist who has been following the ongoing turmoil in Haiti. Thank you so much for being with us. So what are we to make of Blinken's visit, and what does Haiti need most other than, moral support from the U.S.?
Well, what Haiti needs the most at this stage is to secure the country and to end the violence. And the United States has been supportive in that with pledges for the United Nations Security Support Mission to Haiti. And Blinken is in town to meet with, as you said in your intro, the 9 members of the Transitional Presidential Council to discuss some of these corruption problems. 3 of those members have been implicated in corruption scandals. So I think the main problem is the security, but also there is the day after. Once you do get some sort of security in that country, and there is a vision for that, there is discussion of having elections at the end of 2025 and then a handover in February of 2026. Now, this is a very questionable date, but it's still a vision that people are trying to attain. So for that time, the day after, what I think that the Haitians that I've been talking to say that they need from the United States is accountability for this corruption, which is rampant in Haiti amongst the oligarchs and political elites. The stopping of the flow of weapons. There was a report that came out earlier this year that the principal source of weapons in Haiti is the United States. Haiti does not manufacture its own weapons. They get all of their weapons from the United States, from states with lax gun laws that then funnel their weapons via straw purchases through to Florida, and then they're sent on small boats from Florida to Haiti. So these are the main issues. And then I think also aid. The people that I've been talking to about aid say that they would like to see a sort of better vision of the United States aid program in Haiti, specifically in terms of food. There's a lot of food insecurity, and instead of perhaps sending food that is grown in the United States to be trying to shore up the local farmers. At this stage, only 10% of our aid, of the United States' aid, goes towards locally sourced food. So a lot of the people that I've been talking to in that arena for the day after want that to change and want there to be created a more sustainable system in Haiti, so that it's not simply an aid state, which is how it's referred to these days because it requires so much aid, but can actually stand up on its own.
Marcia, before I lose you, on that question of accountability, what does that mean, and does that mean what the U.S. has been contemplating, which is supporting a UN peacekeeping mission to assist the Kenyan-led mission?
So the UN peacekeeping mission is fraught with problems. First of all, the Kenyan-led security support mission is right now underfunded, which is why they're looking to this sort of new way of threading that needle. But a lot of the people that I've spoken to in Haiti say that the Kenyans are actually not joining the Haitian police on the front lines, that they're standing back, that they're ill-equipped, they're not able to actually do the job, and you're seeing that there's really been no impact on the violence. A lot of the police officers are also complaining about the fact that they make about $2,200 a month, whereas the Kenyans make about $1,500 a month. So you have this push-pull between the Kenyans and the Haitian police. So shoring that up with a UN peacekeeping mission may not necessarily address these problems. You also have the issue that the UN is not popular in Haiti. In 2010, they brought cholera to Haiti and killed about 10,000 people, and it remains an epidemic to this day. You also have many sexual abuse scandals. So the Haitians are very reticent of a longer-term UN mission in Haiti.
Marcia Biggs in Los Angeles for us. Thank you so much, Marcia.
Thank you.
Pope Francis continues to churn up the miles on his 12-day trip. The 87-year-old leader of the Catholic Church led Mass for thousands in Indonesia Thursday before attending an interfaith meeting at the largest mosque in Southeast Asia. The pontiff and Indonesia's Grand Imam signed a joint declaration calling for religious harmony. They also discussed climate change, calling it a, quote, environmental crisis and an obstacle to coexistence. Pope Francis will leave Indonesia for Papua New Guinea Friday before heading to East Timor and Singapore. In total, he will travel more than 20,000 miles, marking the longest trip of his papacy. Still to come, the school shooting in Georgia is putting a new focus on teachers and how they manage in a world of gun violence. We'll speak to a teacher who survived the Sandy Hook massacre about what educators face and the training they'll need and the laws that need to be passed. You're streaming The Daily Report.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
The
authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am. This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to the Daily Report. I'm John Dickerson. Here are some additions to our top stories. China is putting an end to nearly all international adoptions, scrapping a program that had sent thousands of children overseas since the 1990s. International adoptions were mostly on hold during COVID after years of declines. Now birth rates are dropping in China, and the country is experiencing a gender imbalance with millions of more boys. President Biden's son Hunter has pleaded guilty to all 9 charges against him in his federal tax evasion case. He now faces up to 17 years in prison and more than $1.3 million in fines. We're learning more about the 14-year-old accused of killing 2 students and 2 teachers in a school shooting Wednesday. Police interviewed him more than a year ago after anonymous tips about online posts threatening a shooting. However, investigators did not have enough evidence to arrest him at the time. Law enforcement officers in Winder, Georgia, were able to rapidly respond to Wednesday's shooting at Apalachee High School because of new technology. Barrow County Sheriff Judd Smith says the district had given all teachers special new ID badges armed with panic buttons a week ago. Law enforcement was notified of a possible shooting via these IDs at 10:20 a.m. They were dispatched 3 minutes later. Sheriff says the school's 2 resource officers had already been looking for the suspect when the police arrived. The Barrow County School District says these resource officers have extensive training on active shooters, school safety, and threats. Joining us now is Abby Clemens. She is the executive director, co-founder, and a board member of the Teachers Unified to End Gun Violence. She is also a teacher who survived the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in 2012. Abby, before we get to the policy, what happens every time you hear of another one of these shootings for you?
It just, that day resurfaces, and not that it's ever far from my mind, even though it's almost 12 years now. Not only does it really resurface in terms of the day, but it just is a stark reminder that for everyone impacted in that school, in that town, all of their families, this is day 1 now of their new normal. Life is not going to be the same, never again, from what happened this week there, yesterday.
This school had resource officers, panic buttons, special door locks, and it was still a tragedy. In a state and a country where guns are so easily accessible, is there anything more that can be done for teachers?
Look, everyone involved in a community has to be all in on this issue, on gun violence prevention. Gun deaths are the leading cause for children. I mean, think about that. It's not drowning. It's not automobile accidents. It's guns. So we need everyone in on a plan on what we're going to do to prevent these. There's not going to be one drill. There's not going to be one protocol that's going to really make the difference here. Sure, you can try to put all these things in place and something will help, right? We hope. But there is no data to prove that the drills that kids and teachers endure on a daily basis in this country actually save lives. I mean, we see the resources that were there at this high school, and the drills and the preparedness that we put people through. But the thing is, we're not getting to the root of the problem. And you said it, it's easy access to guns and ammunition. And until we make a decision that we're going to do something about this, all of us, everyone involved in the community, then these things are going to continue to happen.
Abby, let me ask you about, as somebody who has taught kids, been in a school, when I talk to experts who have studied the disturbing number of incidents like this, that often the case is what appears to be the case here, even though we have limited information about the shooter, which is that there is a mental health issue at the heart of this, and that these experts say that if you see a kid in crisis, there are ways, if people wanted to spend the money on filling schools with specialists who can help with the mental health issues, which, by the way, affect all kinds of kids. How do you see the mental health piece of this? Not discounting what you just said about gun laws, but just focusing on that for a moment, implementing that in the school environment and what could be done.
Sure. I mean, we know that we lack resources in schools and communities for mental health. However, all countries deal with this issue, right? All countries have kids who play video games. And we are unique in that we allow easy access to guns. Sure, I think it would be great if we spent more money on counselors and curriculum that addresses the problems of loneliness and isolation that we've seen, especially since COVID. But instead, we're spending money on resource officers and panic buttons instead of getting to part of the problem. And so we're really leaving a generation of kids out to dry. And they are looking at us, at their elders, at people in power, at their leaders, and saying, how are you allowing this to happen?
Finally, you have said, and your organization has said, that teachers are often excluded from the conversation on gun violence. What do you mean by that? What needs to improve?
Well, teachers are experts on kids, but we're often left out on the decisions that are made in terms of how to best prepare kids in healthy ways for conflict, for violence, and also in terms of safety protocols for the district and also legislation. We know kids. We know what's right for kids. We know what clicks with kids in terms of getting them to understand when to make good decisions for themselves, right? Not to hold on to guns for other people, not to put themselves in dangerous situations. But we're often not included in these conversations. I don't think it's on purpose. We're teaching all day. And so perhaps it takes a little longer to provide us the time to join. But we are the experts in this area. This is what we're trained to do. Sadly, part of the silent part of teacher certification is now being a first responder and a human shield. Instead, we'd like to be part of the ways that we can prevent these tragedies from happening.
Abby Clements, Executive Director of Teachers Unified to End Gun Violence. Thank you so much, Abby.
Thank you so much for having me.
Still to come, the Justice Department announces several different indictments against Russia over the course of the last 2 days. We'll discuss what kinds of threats the feds are trying to contain. You're streaming the Daily Report.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The Justice Department has been firing off indictments against Russia this week. On Thursday, the DOJ named 5 Russian military members over an alleged cyber attack conspiracy in 2022 that targeted Ukraine and 26 NATO allies, including the United States. The malware attack happened right before Russia invaded Ukraine. U.S. officials have said this could have been Russia's first shot in the war with Ukraine. Federal authorities are offering up to $60 million combined for information leading to the hackers' arrests. DOJ is also going after Russia for its election interference. On Wednesday, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced dozens of internet domains were seized. They also charged 2 members of a Russian-controlled media outlet. One day later, the DOJ charged a former Trump 2016 campaign advisor for working with a sanctioned Russian television network and laundering the proceeds. Chris Krebs joins us from Washington. He's the former director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and he's a CBS News cybersecurity expert and analyst. Chris, it's great to be with you again. Wow. Okay, there's a lot of action this week. Is there something to be said about all of this happening at the same time against Russia?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. I do believe that some indictments take time, right? They're released, they're unsealed when they're ready to go, when the judge is ready to move. Others, there are absolutely technical reasons for releasing and timing. And I think specifically one of the aspects or one of the recent sanctions against the Doppelganger group, which is a disinformation for hire group that's run out of Russia, I think that may have been timed just right relative to where we are in the election cycle, because that campaign relied upon a series of websites and online outlets that when you take them offline, it takes time to reconstitute the websites and the infrastructure. It takes time to redevelop the followings, the engagement. So I think some of these may have been, hey, this is the right time to do it. Others may have been, hey, it's ready to go. The court says we can unseal.
I want to get to election interference quickly, or in a minute, but quickly. This question of the malware target on the NATO countries in 2022. How serious was that, just in general, and also as warfare is going to change. It's going to have stuff that explodes, and then the cyber piece. Evaluate, if you would, that effort.
Yeah, so that last question about where cyber fits into the broader modern day warfare is something that we as observers and analysts were taking a hard look at the beginning of the 2022 further invasion of Ukraine. Whispergate is not ransomware, and I think that's probably what most of your viewers are used to, is hearing about ransomware attacks on banks and hospitals and things of that nature. This was a wiper. That means that the Russians got into networks. They took the data that they wanted out. They conducted other espionage activities. And then when they met their objectives, they unleashed this destructive software that wiped what's known as the master boot record. It is not recoverable. So it was entirely destructive. However, it was only deployed, as far as I can tell at least, in Ukraine. However, this group, GRU, the Military Intelligence for Russia, Unit 29155, they have been pretty busy in Europe and in the US in terms of scanning for vulnerable systems and then getting a foothold, getting access, and then waiting perhaps for a moment down the road that they may be able to deploy something like WhisperNet.
Now to election interference. You managed this madness when you were at CISA. What did you take in the indictments? What strikes you in this most recent action?
Well, I think the real thing that resonated with me is that if you think back to 2016, we were talking about Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts that the Russians controlled. This time around, we're talking about money going into the United States to fund influencers, to allegedly drive some of their reporting and some of their videos. Separately, we're seeing this massive network of websites that I already talked about, content creation, using AI. We've been talking about the risk of AI in elections for quite some time now, but we've seen AI-powered disinformation campaigns now. So while we perhaps maybe think a little bit too much about what the Russians did last time, shows the adversary is dynamic. They're innovating on the fly and they're building new capabilities. The last thing, though, is this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're in September, early September at that. If I know anything about the Russians, they have a comprehensive plan driven by Putin, and we're only seeing maybe just a fingernail scratching the surface of that plan.
Let me, as a last question, ask you about two categories and compare it to what you had to manage when you were in the job dealing with elections, because you got such high marks for the 2020 election. One is the actual physical infrastructure that has to do with voting and counting of votes and all of that, and how secure that is relative to when you were in the job. And the second is what we've just been talking about, which is the information conversation space in which mayhem can be unleashed and panic can be sown. How much more complicated is that than last time?
Yeah, just to touch on that first piece about the election infrastructure, I'm as confident in the 24 election infrastructure as I was 20, because we've had so much more attention, investment, more personnel, cybersecurity navigators. CISA, the organization I ran, Jen Easterly runs now, has hired specific election security advisors. So feeling pretty good about the election infrastructure. It's that information environment that continues to be assaulted, not just by foreign actors, but by domestic actors that are really focused on, in a lot of cases, grifting, but more importantly, it's corrupting views and the confidence in public institutions and the ability of our government, our leaders, our political leaders, and our business leaders to actually do what's needed for the American public.
Yeah, some of the calls are coming from inside the House. Chris Krebs, thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks, John.
Still to come, fans have been waiting for decades for Britpop band Oasis to reunite. And the last hurdle to seeing the group live is Ticketmaster. So fan outcry is prompting an investigation into the company. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more. Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Nations are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Parts of the West are expected to swelter under a heat wave through the weekend. More than 57 million people are under heat alerts Thursday, and heat records could be broken in some major cities. For more, here's meteorologist Mike Bettis from our partners at the Weather Channel.
We know that summer's really hanging on in some parts of the country, and that is the West. Record-breaking heat in a lot of places. Look at the numbers for us tomorrow. We'll do 106 in Las Vegas, 103 in Tucson. The triple-digit heat goes all the way up into Medford, even Portland with an impressive 98. And we'll likely hit 110 or higher in a place like Phoenix. We've done that 56 different times this summer, an all-time record for Phoenix. The numbers on Saturday getting into the weekend still hot, including a 97 in Los Angeles, and temperatures warm up and down the East Coast with the extreme heat in the desert Southwest. Then you look at the Gulf Coast, temperatures are on the cooler side. It's nothing but clouds and rain. We've got a coastal low that's sitting here and spinning. It's producing heavy showers for us, especially in coastal Louisiana, and places like New Orleans could see excessive rain, and some places in Louisiana might see double-digit rain for us here. Obviously, this could lead to some excessive flooding, too. But then you look at the front that dives its way southbound getting into the weekend and early next week. Low humidity, lower temperatures, looks and feels a lot like fall in many places with temperatures as much as 15 degrees below average. And for the latest, you can always join us on the Weather Channel and now on your streaming TV device.
Mike Bettis, thank you. The UK is investigating Ticketmaster over prices for tickets to see the rock band Oasis. It comes after hundreds of thousands of fans hoping to purchase tickets for the band's long-awaited reunion tour were met with sudden price markups after hours-long queues. Ticketmaster has previously defended its dynamic pricing model, which adjusts prices in real time according to supply and demand. The competition watchdog will see if Ticketmaster engaged in unfair commercial practices and determine if consumers were pressured by a short time window into paying inflated prices. Here's a look at some of the stories we're covering in our next hour. The alleged Georgia shooter was on the FBI's radar more than a year before Wednesday's attack. We have new details on the investigation. Plus, Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrives in Haiti as the country battles severe gang violence. We'll take a look at what the troubled nation needs from the United States. And after a series of changes, Hunter Biden pleads guilty to the federal tax evasion charges. We'll explain where the case goes from here. You're streaming CBS News.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean? What does that mean?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on